ask to ensure audio quality, that we mute our microphones, because I know I have, spam callers calling the house and dogs barking and ruffling papers, so I'll try to keep it down. And then finally, one final note is that you can add your questions anytime during the seminar, and we will make sure to address them at the end and hopefully give you some really good, insightful answers. And you're always welcome to unmute yourself too. It's not just in written form. Okay, thank you. All right, now over to our wonderful presenters. Some of you may know Joan Weber. She is and was on the Washington Sculptors Group board from 2002 to 2010. And hey, she came back for a second tenure. How's that, from 2017 until now. Joan is definitely a business person. After an academic start with 11 years at the university level, she built her own printing machinery export business with her aunt. And, for 23 years, she was a sales VP in a large printing company here in the DC metro area. And for the last 15 years, Joan has worked in the commercial real estate development industry. Joan describes her connection to the Washington Sculptors Group as a friend of the arts. We love that for sure, and of sculpture, a collector of Baltimore, Washington area work, a supporter of education, especially of folks just starting out in whatever field, which I think is incredible. So we're so excited to have you, Joan. Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks for doing it.
All right, thank you. And many of you may also know Eric Celarier. He lives and works in the DC metro area. He has a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Maryland, a Master of Fine Arts from the University of Cincinnati, and he is an artist, educator, reviewer, and curator. Eric describes the central theme of his work as a biological evolution associated with human impact. I think that's so poignant these days. Eric says of his work, I exploit garbage as a metaphor. I engineer sculptures and prints from everyday cast-offs. I call attention through my work to the Earth's history of radical biological change that seems to coincide with dramatic environmental shifts. Much of Eric's work can be seen as designing opportunities to allow audiences to construct personally meaningful understandings of our world. And now onto your hostess. That's me, Asma Chaudhry. I'm a sculptor, educator, and member of the WSG Board of Directors. And in this role, I enjoy serving as a social media advocate for all of you. So if you aren't currently a member or are seeking to renew your membership, please go ahead and do so, because we'd love to have you on board, have your work in the artist gallery and the member gallery that we have on our website, and we can share your work online on our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And it is my pleasure to be hosting tonight and teching with our wonderful WSG chairperson, Annie Farrar. We're both going to be working behind the scenes just to make sure things go smoothly. This is our first WSG conversation on professional skills development, focused on writing for artist statements. Okay, so let's get into the real deal, why we're all here. Myself included, writing a statement is difficult for everyone. We know that a good statement requires a lot of thought and revision, more than one sitting, as in to review, edit, and rewrite, feedback from honest others, right? Such as your friends, family, and artists, and editing from a good editor, okay? Easier than said than done, right? So make sure to start early and leave plenty of time to think. So let's turn it over to Joan and Eric. Thank you, the floor is yours.
Hi, and hi. Welcome everybody. We're thrilled to do this. And I just wanted to share that as a business person, I probably am the only person who's been on the board of the Sculptors Group who's not a sculptor, but my first love in art has been always sculpture. And so part of my commitment to the organization is to help grow an understanding of that art, of that form of art, as a very important part of the community, the art community, very important part of the community. Eric, is there any way that we can have, well, Eric, I can't see Eric there.
Yeah, I haven't said anything, so I guess it'll pop up.
Is there any way to get a speaker view, Annie?
Hello?
Hello?
Yes. So I think, Joan, if you look at the top and click on speaker view, and we'll try to
Okay.
get Annie there.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Speaker view is your own personal setting, so I can't
Okay,
control
well,
that
oh,
part.
okay, then, okay, well, then I'll do it, but you can take off the slide that's on the screen now, please.
Okay, so you're ready for the next slide?
Beyond, yes. In any case. Okay. Anyway, Eric, let me see if I can get this organized for myself here. I apologize with all this. Hmm. Hmm. I've lost everybody's image right now, so.
Yeah, with the screen share, it's mostly going to be the slide.
Okay. Can you give me the screen? I could set up to do this. I apologize to the folks.
Do you have the PowerPoint ready on your thing?
I can get there I can get there.
I have to make you the host, okay?
I'm sorry, you'll
I
do it?
have to turn over the hosting of the event to you then.
Okay. Let me just, okay. It'll take me 1 minute and I do apologize for this.
In the meantime, while Joan is getting settled in, I raised a question to the group. You know, when you think about writing artist statements, what is one word that you think of first? So feel free to share something. Mine might be daunting.
I think mine might be opportunity.
Love that. Would anyone else like to chime in with a word? Evolving. I love that.
Short.
Go ahead.
Concise.
Concise. Very nice. Yeah, concise, Mark. Yeah.
And I've got that up, and how do I recapture the, let me just get here.
Outsourcing. That's a good one. Thank you, Steve. Thoughtful, concise. Joan, there should be a green button that says share screen.
Yep, I'll get there.
Thoughtful, outsourcing. Steve, you want to tell me a little bit about outsourcing? There's a good question mark there.
This is pretty funny. They're supposed to be telling us how to.
Honey, I apologize. I host.
So,
This is, can you see my screen now?
not yet.
Not yet. Okay, let me get to share screen then.
Oh, thank you, Steve. I appreciate that. I'd rather get someone else to write it for me. I know. But, you know, there's something interesting about, you know, knowing yourself and your own work and that visual storytelling. Okay, Joan, how's it looking?
You know, I'm getting more flustered than not, so I really ask people's indulgence and apologize.
Would you like me to try to bring it up for you?
If you,
Yeah, I think that might be a good idea
yes, that would be.
Let me try. Okay.
because it worked well
Let's
yesterday.
see.
Not,
Let's see. Do. All right, Joan, if you could send the host back to Annie. Let's try that one more time.
okay, I send the host back to Annie. Viewing the screen, where I'm seeing Annie has started screen sharing, so.
Okay.
Okay, so you have to click on my icon and the little I forget the little dots next to it. If you make me the host, I can do it again.
Um, okay.
Cursor and put it on top of Annie's picture, and then there'll be three
Okay.
little dots. Then click
Okay.
that.
Okay. I'm not seeing Annie. That's here. Okay, there. Okay, I got it. Okay.
Okay.
So now it should be with Annie.
Okay. Let's try that one more time.
I'm still not, oh, sorry. Unfortunately, I'm still not showing up as a host. It said somehow.
So am I supposed to do something else here?
Did you make me the host? Because I'm not.
I don't. I'm seeing you are viewing Annie for our screen, and I'm clicking on the dots, and I don't see any image of you, and then I'm just clicking on the dots, and it's chat, unpin video, and show non-video participants.
Okay, can anybody see my screen? Because it doesn't look like screen sharing on my end. So there must be a weird glitch. I'm sorry, everyone.
Conversation, and we're all artists. We understand. So please go ahead.
Okay, and just so everybody's aware, there is actually a first part has a script, which was part of the initial networking conversation that was scheduled at a DC library before COVID, and before this pandemic. And so there are slides, and it's a script. It's been developed even further, and the whole program will be available in a written form, in the slides as a file for anybody who's interested. So Eric, I'm going to just start and ask you the first question, which was, why did you decide that writing an artist statement would be the first program in this series of professional development?
Well, I wasn't taught how to do this originally coming out of school. I'd written some papers and stuff, but I hadn't really been taught how to make an effective statement. In fact, mine was probably pretty jargony when I first came out. And I've had, I've read a bunch of statements over a period of time. You do that when you curate stuff, and a lot of them aren't that good. And most of the time it's for very avoidable reasons. And I thought that a workshop that, what I'm going to tell you tonight is basically from my direct experience, some of the research I've done, can point the way to some of the resources. We can share some of those resources with you. Should you run into significant amount of trouble in writing your statement, the Washington Sculptors Group can team you up with somebody who could help you write. But I'm going to give you a caveat, which is that nobody's going to be able to work on a deadline, because it just is not. It's not conducive to doing a good one, which would be what we'd be after anyway. Most of these statements need to be written over a certain period of time and written towards a certain audience. But in fact, if there's anything that should be the big takeaway of this, is give yourself plenty of time. Otherwise, you're going to get flustered. It's just not going to be more stressful than it has to be, and it's not going to be all that good.
I guess one of the questions I would have is, why are they so important? And I think there is an emphasis on the artist statement, and one of the first things curators ask for is an artist statement. And why? But why do you feel like they are so important?
Well, it's because they clarify your thinking. They show other people what the major themes that you might be dealing with, so that people have some jumping off point to understand what you're doing. And for somebody like me, I think it's an integral part of actually making art. It's not just a sidebar to the creation process. For me, the thinking should be intertwined with what you're doing.
And I think we've been talking about artist statements in a plural, because one of the first thoughts that a lot of people were sharing in the work that we were looking at is it's not one and done, that for every different audience, as your own work evolves and as you're applying to different situations, you'll need to write and rewrite your statement, just basically to keep it fresh. Very often a document becomes stale over time if it's not reworked. And I think it's very important to get the essentials down and then to keep it fresh and do rewriting. So we've been saying here that artist statements are, because you're producing many of them. From my point of view, artist statements are an opportunity. And they're an opportunity to introduce yourself, your work, your body of work, a particular body of work, to attract interest in your work and your ideas. And it's to make that first impression. And as somebody once said, you only have one chance to make a first impression. And I think it's very critical if you're new to the field and don't have a long history of work, or if you're new to a body of work, or if you're applying to a new situation, that it really is important how you represent yourself. It's sort of as important as the work itself in a way, because you're communicating very much about what it is you're looking to do. I find that it's an opportunity, and I do a similar thing, not with artist statements, but in other areas of my life, to clarify your thinking. It can be an opportunity, if you take it, to force yourself to get very clear about what it is you're intending to do, what it is you want to do, and what it is you want to say. The idea, and I said, to me, it's an amazing opportunity, actually, because it forces, a deadline often will force you to be thinking about what's unique about your work, and why should I, as your reader and your audience, be paying attention to it, paying attention to your work, being interested in your work. So we thought about ways of getting started, and one way of getting started that's often really completely overlooked is to read what other statements, what other people in your field have done. So do the research, which is why time is important. If you could read in general, read artist statements, or very particularly for your field, for your kind of work, for the work you want to get into doing, to read those statements and look at them critically. Don't just be reading them and absorbing them, but read them critically, focus on clarity. Are they clear? How are they written? Do you get a clear picture of that person's work or that person's purpose? Are you enrolled in it? Is it all about them, maybe even more than their art? Or is it something that's enrolling you and getting you interested? I've made a note to write down what worked for you and what did not. Very often we'll read things and we read over them. But if you really sit and underscore and underline what it is that caught your attention and what it is that stopped you, very often a sentence will stop you. You don't know why. You can't take it further. Is the reading interesting? Is it difficult to read? Does it give you a clear idea of the work? Are you left wanting to see that work? Do you want to know more about that artist and more about that work? Or are you just disinterested? And so when you read that, whatever it is you are reading, you want to ask those questions of what about it attracted me, what about it stopped me, and why? Because you want to be as successful as you can in the way you're doing that. So as you read each of them, focus on clarity and enrollment are the two concepts that for me are important. Does it draw you in and create interest? And then to write down what worked for you and what did not. One way of getting started and to clarify your practice is to record yourself talking with others. We all have recording apps on our phone. Talk to your family about work you're doing, about a current piece. Write down, listen to what you said. Listen to the words you used when you were informal and just talking and trying to explain. note areas when you listen to the recording where perhaps you did not communicate effectively, where you wish you could have said it otherwise. Write down what you say. And in that process, you'll identify some key words and some key thoughts that are probably central to your story. And I keep emphasizing the write it down because it's, again, we tend to think we will remember it, but it's the key words you're looking for here. What you're looking for is exactly the words that, that make the difference. So in every instance, I have here, what emotions or reactions are you looking for? And those you'll be able to tell how successful you were in accomplishing that in the conversation, in the presence of friends or family, and in that conversation that you've recorded. Eric?
Yeah, so to begin the process, one of the things I would do is gather all my images together, and then I'm going to look for commonalities. You really want to study them, and you want to find patterns. Those patterns will then inform you. What are your methods? What are your materials? How do the materials support your concepts? Who is your audience? I mean, who are you trying to reach? You know, and who would your work appeal to? And how's your work? And I think this is really important. How's your work unique? Why am I going to look at your work as opposed to somebody else's? So we.
Can I just add something there too?
Yeah, please.
That's interesting to add while you're brainstorming is to understand who are your influences. And this in a conversation that Eric and I were having while we were developing this. I don't know if many of you know Diane Cispaniak, and she and I were having this conversation about her work, and she was saying that a lot of her work people associate with Rothko because it's quiet and it's nuanced and it's very reflective work. But she said actually the truth is the art that influenced me the most is the work of Paul Klee. And I would never have guessed that because there's nothing about her work in my thinking other than some of the colors that looks like Paul Klee's work. And what she said is he was very much about sensate experience. And so when she would teach, she would have her students bite into a lemon, and then they had to paint the sensation of experiencing that lemon. And apparently that was a technique or an approach that Klee would have used in making his work more sensate. So I just wanted to share that because sometimes a way of talking about your work that's a little bit unusual and unexpected for the work that people will actually see can be who influenced you in subtle ways.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, your work doesn't always have to be influenced by another artist. My work is very much influenced by Stephen Jay Gould, who's a famous paleontologist who wrote a bunch of articles for I think it was Scientific American. So one of the things that I think helps a lot of people is to maybe start with some sort of icebreaker exercise or something. So one of the exercises that Joan was talking to me about, which I thought was a really good one, is to come up with 20 words that describe your work in some way. And throughout the time that you're coming up with that list, think about words that might be searchable. Because in the end, you want a couple of words that describe your work that when somebody goes and looks for your artwork on a registry or something like that, that it will pop up for people. So you write this word, 20 words is a lot of words. So what you're going to want to do, because we're going to try to focus, is to cut that list down. We're going to hone it down to 10 words, all right? And then once you've decided those 10, then take a couple minutes and then think about how to take it down to 5. Now, when you go five words that are really important to your work, you now have the bare bones, or you know, you have the start of what's going to be a statement. So when you write a statement, you have to, it's not just one statement done, you finished, you know, it's a certain length all the time. It is, you're going to make statements over time, because when you apply to different things or you show it to different audiences, you're going to need to tailor that so that it fits who you're talking to. It helps everybody to have a general statement. But you're also going to have to think about, if you are applying to an exhibition or for a grant or to a curator or a gallerist or grantor, those are going to be slightly different statements depending upon who you're talking to. I mean, if you're applying for a show and it's about our outdoor sculpture, you may not want to emphasize the sculpture that has to be indoors all the time, because that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I mean, that's just one of many examples. You may actually have to create a statement that just applies to one piece. So you're really just describing that one piece in relation to everything else you do. The last thing is that you may also be talking about a certain body of work, like a specific body of work. Like say, you know, if you are just talking about your sculpture in one sense, you may not be talking about anything else but that one set of sculptures that you just got finished for a particular event. So once you've done that, hopefully it looks like we're starting to get some PowerPoints up. If we could get to the one that says artist statements with the short 103.
I'm not seeing any, so I must have.
Yeah, that's Annie right there, 100 to 300 words, Annie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right on.
It's further down. It's going to be maybe down to
Well, it's slide.
yeah, right after that.
It would
right
be
there.
slide 50.
Right after that one, the next one.
Yeah.
10.
Great.
All right. So when you sit down, you're going to have to remember that. I'm going to wait for the slide to come up because it'll be more effective.
Okay. I just want to underscore something else, but that we said earlier, the slide that says finding the right words, that exercise, one of the things often people who are involved in art making are not necessarily verbal or not comfortable with their verbal skills, or that's not what they do. They'll do the making of the work and not necessarily comfortable talking about it. And I think finding the right word, that exercise of really honing down what are the essential keywords that you're looking for. Because once you have that base, it seems to me, it represents your values, your intention, your materials, your direction. And that is the base that will start supporting all the rest of the writing that you'll be doing over time, because it will evolve. But finding the keywords and spending the time to seriously do that as an exercise, I've found to be incredibly useful in my life. And I just wanted to underscore that. Finding the right words is something to think about.
Yeah.
Any slides up? I'm not seeing slides, so I'm.
I am seeing slides, so I'm.
Does anybody else see slides? Just nod, since you're muted. Do you nod if you're seeing slides?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I got slides and I'm pretty happy about it. So.
Yeah.
Just I did that exercise. Even though I've written a lot of artist statements, and I think they're decent, and it caused me to rethink about some of the language in mine, and so you know, I'm at present thinking about what I want to. I'm actually going to be making some changes in my artwork, so I think the whole thing might change quite a bit. So. But anyhow, so we're at artist statements are short. Our example that we're going to share with you, which is a fictional example that I made up of some artwork that doesn't exist, but could, and it has a pretty good statement to go with it, so if somebody wanted to do it. You got to use clear language, no jargon. You really need to make it personal. It's about I, and you want to use the active voice. There are times when people will sort of drift into passive voice, and even I have done that on occasion, but you want to use the active voice. It's a lot more direct and it's a lot more clear. In the end, this has to be in your own words, so even if you get somebody to help you with it, They can't help you so much that it isn't your work anymore. You're going to probably want to make some references in your work to your materials and your intent, and you may even specifically cite some of those.
Okay. Linda, can you see the screen with slides? Linda Smith? Linda, can you see a screen with slides since you're muted? Can anybody see a screen with slides, or are you seeing a black
Yeah,
screen?
I see them with slides.
I'm not saying Eric. I want to see if participants can, because I'm still not seeing it.
Yeah, I see a slide.
Yes.
Okay, good. Because I'm going to be reading
Yes.
that I'm not seeing on the screen. And it's a longer document than we would ever ordinarily put on a screen or that we would read. But we decided to do it as a way of parsing a real document and pulling it apart to analyze where are the strengths and what could be otherwise. So I'm going to read it. This is a fictional artist statement that Eric wrote. The work does not exist, but do we have the screen up, Eric? That is.
Yeah, it is. It's up.
I can't.
Sleep more than brackets are conscious hours. Existing somewhere between the painting and sculpture, this body of work materializes the shapeless images of the unconscious. By painting dreams on secondhand blankets and mattresses, I make visible the hopes and fears of contemporary life as it reveals itself to me by personal testimony and commonplace objects. Most of us are born and will die in beds. We spend as much as half our lives in a bed, so using these materials as a canvas seems especially reflective of what it means to be human. One would imagine it difficult to obtain such personal items from others, but it is easier than one might think to find contributors, eager to donate and relate information about these objects for me to interpret. Using acrylic, I depict these stories on the bedding material. By leaving gaps in the design, I leave no doubt as to what these articles are. Arguably, the most private room in the house, the bedroom alone says a lot about its owners. As a place to rejuvenate, a place to retreat, love, consider, and explore, I see the bed and its linens as emblematic of who we are. Next slide. Again, I'm not seeing, so.
Oh, well, we're on. Yes, very good. So let's just pull apart that first paragraph here. The way I set it up. Now, this is basically a formula that you could use to create your statement. It's not one that you have to use. It's just a viable answer to how to write one so that you have something to start off with and a goal. And then you can change it any way you want if you want to, or find other ways to do it. But I've often thought that this was not a bad way to organize things. First, I try to come up with an attention getter or hook or something. And I think you got to be careful that it isn't too blatant. But in this case, I go sleep more than brackets are conscious hours. The idea is that that's kind of vague, and it's unclear exactly what you're saying, but it's interesting enough that one wants to know more. The second sentence in this ends up being an explanation for the hook, and is basically conceptual. It says, existing somewhere between the painting and the sculpture, this body of work materializes the shaped image of the unconscious. Now, my third sentence, it relates to those materials. It's going to talk about the materials and how the concept fits with the materials. So I'm basically explaining the whole thing by saying the paintings on dreams. Oh, that's what that unconscious stuff about. It's about painting on dreams and a painting on secondhand mattresses and stuff. Oh, well, there's a connection there now. Okay, I make visible the hopes and fears. Okay, so he's trying to talk about, or she's trying to talk about what we might dream about. Of contemporary life. Oh, that's coming through our dreams. And so it's all coming together there in that last sentence. So 1, 2, 3, hook, talk about the hook conceptually, and then show how your materials relates to that conceptual.
Right. That sort of reinforces the idea that Eric mentioned earlier of how do your materials support your concept.
Absolutely.
We often are intrigued by the materials, I think, and work with the materials and explore them. And that's valid too. But you want the materials to reflect your ideas and really support them. And this is a way of telling that. saying
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I think so. So can we go to the next page, because it's the second paragraph? Excellent. All right. So here, I'm going to be talking about the conceptual explanation some more. I'm filling it out some more. And I'm going to be talking about the process of materials, which is also sort of the same thing I did in the first paragraph, but I'm going to give you more details. So most of us are born or will die in beds. We spend much half of our life in a bed. So using the materials as a canvas seems especially reflective of who we are. So that's an explanation of those materials and what they are conceptually. Then one would imagine it's difficult. So I'm talking all about the supplies here, difficult to obtain, the personal items from others. And I say it's not so hard to do it, that people are contributing to my work. So I'm having that inner relationship with somebody. And that these objects I will then interpret through those people. So I'm talking about the materials and still how they conceptually fit together. And then I talk specifically about using the acrylic to paint on the bedding. So I'm really sort of giving you a good idea about what you would be seeing should I showed you a slide or of one of these. And then I'm leaving you no doubt to what those articles are. So you can still see their beds and mattresses and blankets and stuff, yet I painted all over them, but it left enough gaps so you could see. So I've talked about it. Now, the third thing on there that you could do is you could cite a specific example in there if you want to. I didn't in this case, it's not done here, but it's perfectly all right to do that, especially if you're applying with a particular piece to a particular show. You might want to talk about how that fits into your plan. So now can we go to paragraph 3? All right, the third paragraph, you're going to be finishing up things. You're going to put your work into context, and you want to leave readers with wanting more. And you also want to say within that, allow for reflect on multiple meanings. So you're putting your work in context. It's arguably the most private room in the house. That's the context is that everybody has some sort of relationship with the kinds of things that I'm doing. And that, there are all sorts of ways to see a bed. It rejuvenates us. We retreat there for safety, maybe love, consider. All those things are part of different kinds of meaning that we can have. And finally, the bed and the linens are emblematic of who we are. Well, that leaves you to say, okay, well, I need to see who we are, and I need to see these pieces. So that's that part.
I should have to laugh while we were going through this and before we actually wrote it down. I had read this artist statement, and about halfway through I'm thinking, gee, I have to see this to kind of visualize it. I can't. Then I got to the end where I could sort of visualize it, but in fact, it did exactly. I wanted to see the work because I wanted to get further understanding or better understanding, and it was exactly what it accomplished, exactly what you had intended.
Well, thank you for that.
Agreed, Eric. It's a pretty good fake example. You had me fooled.
I had another one, but it was two-dimensional, and I said, well, we're the sculptors group, so I went with this one. So, all right, so we're done with third paragraph. We can go into the next one. Oh, thank you. All right, so they're written in the first person. You can see that I'm using I, me, I. Whatever you do not write these in the third person. It really is off-putting when you start writing about personal stuff like your artwork, yet you're not really claiming responsibility for it. And it does sound pretentious,
But it always reminds me when people do that of the prescription ad, the medical ads, the pharmaceutical ads on television, where they say heart attack and stroke could be a possibility.
Yeah.
It's your medicine that could create the possibility of a heart attack or stroke.
Yeah.
In this case, the eye is not a vanity eye. And in sales, I used to say to my reps, if the spotlight's on you, it's in the wrong place. It's your customer's need and your customer's requirement. In this case, the eye, again, is not a vanity eye. It is an animation of a process. It animates the process that you personally are committing and making a stand and taking a stand about your intention and your materials and your method and your product. And so that declaration is an important declaration. In each case, it's not about, it's ironically, the I statement and the me is about the work here in this statement. And so it's a careful line, and that's why one of the things you want to do in getting reviews and editing is you take ownership in your document, in the statement, for the work that you've produced. And I think that's important.
I think along with that is that, it's almost like you're talking to somebody. And if you were to walk up to somebody and start talking in the third person, it's just, I mean, athletes sometimes do that. I mean, it was really cool a while back, apparently, for people to do that. But when you talk, if you came up to somebody and said, Salerier says, I mean, it's, somebody else is writing about you in the case that it's third person, not you writing about you. So, all right, I think we can go to the next one. Thank you. All right, so you want to use words that you use, and you want to use words that most people would recognize as language that is not meant to be too pompous or technical or complicated. I've written, I've taken the top, this paragraph here about sleep banks, and I redid it with slumber is paramount issue. Paramount is not a word that we use. I mean, I don't even use it generally, even though I know it, right? Existing somewhere between painting and sculpture, I conceive of works instead of, this is a body word that I use the word materializes, which I think is a little less than envisage instead of see or something like that. Amorphous visions instead of the unconscious. I mean, I think that this statement down here is just not. It just sounds like somebody's got out the thesaurus, which is exactly what I did, and start using words that I don't normally use to try to make myself look like something, like something better than maybe I am. But all this does is all it does is put people off. And I think that it needs to be avoided. So watch what you say. I'm not saying don't use a thesaurus. I use it all the time. But I use words that I know, and I know that other people know. We can go to the next one. Thank you. So you want to use action words. I use these action words: brackets, materialize, I make visible, reveals. Down here's a whole list of them. I think I got them off the web. These are all words that have, look for something to happen, as if you're doing something. And you want to make sure that you keep the energy up in this writing. So using action words helps that. So we go to the next one now, I think.
I think that I'm going to interrupt for a second, Eric.
Yes, please.
This one, the action word strikes me because even Eric and I had gone through this 10 different times, and even at the last minute, as it was being entered, and we were really working with the final slides, I found two that were more passive. It's like trying to lift a pencil. You can't. You either lift it or you don't. You don't try to. You don't. The action is an accomplished state. It's an accomplishment, and I think it's very critical to be doing that, to be taking a stand that's a positive, active stand in the work, not trying to, not conceiving about, not thinking about. Thank you. I'm sorry.
All right. When do not use the present tense, do not use the passive tense. And they can sneak in there because even when I wrote this, I realized that I had snuck in a passive tense. It seemed good to me. And then I was like, really, you should take them all out. And I made sure I did. It's important not to leave passive in, because it just reverses everything in a way that doesn't flow very well. It makes you sound sort of stale and old. So instead of "this body of work was created," all right, we're going to turn that around and say the body of materializes. Instead of "I was concerned," all right, I'm making it visible so you can see it. I'm doing something instead of sort of not really getting to the point. The work is, life reveals itself. It isn't revealed to me. So anyhow, it's a different way. I think it's a more effective way to write. And just about every website that I saw about statements says this thing. So don't do it if they all say it.
I think particularly with art where the production evolves, and if you're sort of stuck in an old story, it gets reflected in the writing, and people experience it as stale. And I think what you want to have the work feel and be reported as very fresh. I mean, that's just my bias, but as new and fresh and vigorous.
Mm-hmm.
Past tense makes it feel stale.
Yeah, I think so.
Eric, that was such a good list. This is Barry Kaufman. I'd love to just see it again so I could write down a few of those.
Yeah, I guess
Sure.
Annie, you want to go back one so they can to look at the list. Is that the list you want?
Yeah, it's the words.
I don't
All
see
right.
the only other thing that we were going to add here before we went to the do's and don'ts, or the don'ts and do's, we decided to end on the do's, is don't write this on your own. And we mentioned that before, but it's worth repeating because so many times we're sort of stuck at the last minute. And if you're doing all these exercises to find the right words and can do it up front, it'll give you time to share a draft with others, with your family, with people who are critical thinkers, maybe analytic thinkers that understand your work. Maybe they don't understand your work. Maybe they don't know your work. But you want to share your draft to get their response. And you want to be a very good listener, because it's very easy to get defensive or get sort of work that we do is very, very personal. But in fact, this is the artist statement is a way of, again, clarifying your work to yourself even, and clarifying the way you're going to talk about it. So to get feedback is very important, and to get honest feedback and to encourage it. Feedback not about your work, but feedback about the artist statement. Is it reflecting my work adequately? Is it presenting it in a new way or a good way? You want to get a good editor, and many of us have friends who do editing and would be perfectly willing to help you, I'm sure. And if you don't have such, you might even consider hiring a writer. And I know that sounds sort of strange thing for ordinary people to hire a writer. Ghostwriting is people earn their livings as ghostwriters, but you're a sculptor, you're not a writer necessarily. So if you need help, get a writer. And what we are going to do with the Washington Sculptors Group, we'll help. We've got folks that are experienced people, and we'll help if you need that kind of feedback or any kind of support. But again, it can't be on a crash deadline at all. Can we turn to the don'ts and do's? Let's go to the don'ts. So the summary for the conversation is: don't use jargon. Don't write too long a statement, 100 to 300 words, maybe 3 paragraphs. That should be it.
Can we go one more slide, please? Sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sort of traveling. I have a black screen.
Yeah.
A Zoom call with a black screen, but I do. The statement that I read, and with your patience, was 196 words. It may have changed because we did a little editing at the end, but it was somewhere around 196 words. So it was right in the middle. And that certainly was adequate to convey a very colorful and rich image of the work that Eric was proposing, we're talking about. Don't use passive or inconsistent voices. And I think that we've talked about it, and I think that's a really important concept, because you are selling yourself essentially. and you're selling the work that you're producing is a reflection of you and your concepts. Don't include unnecessary or pretentious references. We'll get in conversations. I got very turned off very early in my looking at collecting by if I read existential angst one more time in an artist statement, I think I just sort of, that's my stop point. Whenever I see existential angst, it's like enough. So using unnecessary or pretentious references about your work can be very off-putting. Don't include biographical information. That should be in the bio or your CV. Don't romanticize your work. So waxing poetic is not necessarily helpful. And I think they don't say it here, but one of the documents, one of the sources I was reading said, match your language to your work. Match your words to your work. If your work is intense and violent and sharp and steely edged, your words can be sharp and steely edged and hard. If your work is gentle and like Diane's work, very nuanced, you can use nuanced language and calm and quiet language, and your description should match the work that you're talking about. Don't use statements like "I hope to convey" or "I'm trying to." We talked about that a little bit at length. And then don't compare yourself to other artists in your statement. That's usually not useful. It's different to say, who are my influences, if you want to even talk about influences. Again, and as Eric said, they may not be artists, they might be other sources, but you don't really want to compare yourself to another artist in your statement. And don't write this on your own. That's about the 14th time I think we've said that. Next slide, Annie. Do start early, like now. Do clarify your work and find the words. I'm going to relate something. It's a conversation, so I'm going to relate something. I was forced through an exercise with Arttable to do, I love to do a presentation at, it was at the Museum of Women in the National Museum of Women in the Arts. It was a program for Arttable, and I had to learn Pechakucha, which is a short and a Japanese program that's 20 slides, 20 seconds per slide, 6 minutes and 40 seconds, and you have to tell your whole story, period. And the story that I was supposed to tell was what I was going to do to support the art ecosystem in the DC area. In 20 slides, 20 seconds a slide. I honed every word. It was an exercise that took me most of the summer. I was doing it in September and I started probably in July. And I literally couldn't use the word had not. I had to use words like hadn't, because the had not took too long. The slide would go. It was one of the best exercises I ever did in my life in teaching me what was the essential points I wanted to make and the fastest way of making those points. So I just invite, that clarify your work and find the words, to me is a critical way of working and getting started. Get to the point, use short and clear language, include precise and specific references. Again, these lists, you're seeing it on the screen, I'm assuming, and this document will be available if it would be helpful for you. Match your writing to your work. Do use many editors and be prepared to rethink and rewrite. Change your statement based on the opportunity. And that's something we don't always do when we're rushing and crashing to get an application in. We just pull the last statement or the last resume we did, whatever it is that we did, the last statement, and pull it and put it together. It'll be less effective than you really need to be. Do change your statement based on the opportunity. Do draw the reader into your world. And do show why your work is unique and should be of interest to the reader. I guess that's sort of the more formal part of the presentation. You can end the slide share because there will be slides again later, but right now that's it for the moment.
Sure. And Joan, before we go to the next section, I know we have some questions. I did want to go to the audience questions so that they're not waiting entirely to the end. So we had a couple great ones come in. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate that.
Can I make one point real quick?
Of
Ira
course.
said something really good here.
Yes.
He said a don't that we should have added on there, and I think we will for the future is don't tell other people how they should feel when they see your work.
Right.
I think that's pretty important. The work better be speaking for itself enough that, I mean, this is to put your work in and to put your work into context, but it isn't there to demand certain emotions out of other people. I mean, essentially the work has to be finished by the viewer anyway, so you can't tell them how to see it anyway. So I can't tell you how good a point I think that is.
Definitely.
Agreed.
Yeah. And there's a sense of allure that you want the appetite, of the viewer, of the reader to see your work too. Great point, Ira. And I also want to say that Ira mentioned the Grammarly app and website where you can get help as a resource. So I will remind everyone again about Grammarly. I've heard a lot about it recently, so that's another useful tool. We did have two questions that came in from Kimberly. Should the keywords be adjectives, adjectives or nouns? Eric, if you wanted to take that one.
Hold on, I started looking at the chat for some reason. Can you tell me that again?
Sure. Should the keywords be adjectives or nouns?
When I was looking at, I think that it seems to me that the key words are going to be. You see, I when I did that, I also did it as phrases. So I would have adjectives and nouns together. The main thing is that you're trying to limit the numbers of things that you say about your work, so you get down to the important things. I don't think it needs to be either an adjective, a noun. It could even be a verb, I think. But I think the main thing is those words have to be descriptive in some way. So I don't know that you have to limit it to certain certain part of the speech.
Right. Thank you.
The key words are any sets of phrases. It could be as simple as your materials, or I do outdoor sculpture, I do steel work, I do large outdoor sculpture, I do large outdoor public sculpture. Those are searchable, so that if somebody's looking for large steel public sculpture, they find you. So some might be that. Some of the words would be about your intention, I think. What is it that you want to say through your work? So I agree with Eric. I don't think there's any particular part of speech. Because as you're writing it, you're going to use all the different elements of those key words, using them in different ways. But it's what reflects. What is it you want to be seen for? How is it you want your work to be identified? I think.
Great. Thank you. So definitely phrases could be either or, adjectives or nouns, and could also be with your intention. I love that. Jerome had a point to raise. Aren't artist statements typically paired up with photographs anyway? And I'd like to tack on the question, which do you see first, typically? Joan, maybe you want to address that one?
I tend to look. I'm very visual. I'm a reader, but I first am very visual. I was answering to Eric. I tend a question like that. I tend to sort of be more of a gestaltist. I come into a room, I see a body of work or room of work. I'll look at the work first, or I'll look at the image, and usually that's the starting place for me. And if I'm interested, then I will read more. I will read the artist statement. It's not usually how I get drawn in. So a picture would be the first thing I look at. And then if I'm interested, I want to know more about it.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Joan.
I don't know if
And
that
we
helps.
have, yeah, I believe so. You know, as a visual person, and you're trying to imagine that content. So the chicken or the egg, right? Mark asked a great question. Can an artist statement be too short?
It depends on what it depends on where you're sending, who your audience is for that, and what is. There are shows where I have applied for where they only gave me like 200 characters, right? And so it's,
200 characters, not words.
yeah, not even words. I mean, you're 200 characters. So it's a sentence, right?
That's a tweet.
Yeah. So I think the thing is that for the most part, they should be about 100 words at minimum, and they usually shouldn't exceed 300. There are going to be times where you are talking about your work to people where you might need more material. Like if you're giving an artist talk, it might exceed those ends quite a bit. But what we're talking about for the most part are the kinds of things that you write that curators and viewers and gallerists and whoever's seeing your work might see when they go into a gallery to see your work, and they want to know exactly why it is that you've created what you've made.
Eric, we also on the Washington Sculptors Group Gallery, for example, I haven't looked at it recently, but my memory is that many folks put a short artist statement on their page as informative, and it has to be pretty short, because if I'm looking at a gallery on the Sculptors Group, not at a sculptor's website, but at the gallery, and I'm sort of skimming through and just want to see a lot of work, just because I love to see work. I want to see short statements. And I think the beauty of finding the 5 keywords and the 10 keywords is that there are going to be many times. The other day I was looking at the WPA. You can't probably see, I don't know if you can see me, but the WPA catalog for the auction. And they have these little paragraphs that are sort of bios at the back. There's another one that I saw recently that had little artist statements. And I think the shorter ones were perfect, because it's all I wanted to get was a sense of that person's work and the way they talked about their work and the way they dealt with it. So I don't think short's a problem.
Yeah, I think the end is a context issue. So it's hard to come up with a particular set that says it has to be done that way. So.
Right.
Okay. I love this unique question that came in. Thank you. Do you think the approach to statements describing abstract work would/should differ than the approach to writing a statement around representational work?
Can I do a long, short answer to that one?
Go for it. This is your scope.
I saw a Leon Berkowitz print that Hemphill was sending out. I didn't see the image of it. And one of the things they said about Berkowitz's work was that in response to this color school, he was insistent that his mark be a human mark. He did not, what the color school was doing was stripping away the human being who did the work, just leaving the color and leaving the surface. And he wanted it to reflect the human being. And I think an awful lot of abstract work is as humanist, if you will, as figurative work. And there can be figurative work that actually uses figures as elements of abstraction. For me, there is no distinction, or there doesn't have to be a distinction. The distinction for me would be if you're talking about the color school, which sort of stripped away the human expression or the human gesture, tried to. That would be a different story, but I think a lot of abstract work reflects very human conditions. So I think it can be written about the same way. That's just me, but I don't write them, so I don't write artist statements.
I'd say, I just wanted to say that Gerhard Richter says that there's just really no difference between his abstract work and his because it's all illusion and it's really sort of just an imaginary. So, and
That's the MP. I'm not a pipe.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, um,
Right on. Okay, so we can turn over to some questions that you two had for each other, and then we'll go over to some resources to share with everyone, some helpful tips and books and articles. So go ahead, Eric and Joan.
Well, I had a question of Eric that you mentioned different audiences, and I was just curious, how do you tailor change depending on who your audience was, who the audience for the statement is? If you're applying for a residency, or if you're applying, if you're talking with a gallerist about a possible show. I mean, how would you vary that statement?
well, I think that in conjunction with tailoring your statement, you also have to know exactly what you're applying for. I mean, when I first started applying for things, I just started applying for everything, and just, you know, throwing as much spaghetti on the wall as I thought would stay up. But you do need to think about where your work fits and the context with which you know, in which a residency might exist. Say, for instance, some residencies are about trying to find a quiet, contemplative place to work, and other residencies are like in downtown New York or something, and it's a bunch of you know, newly minted MFA people who are into a lot of theory. So, you know, if I'm going to apply with, you know, my work, I'm not going to say the same thing that I would say to go, you know, if I'll probably say something along the lines of, well, I make these artworks about biological evolution, but I might say how I might fit into the environment or something if I was trying to find a residency that was all contemplative, or you know, how is it that you know, we think, and how that thinking fits with the evolution, or something along those lines that fits with the idea of a restful contemplative moment. But if I'm going for the downtown thing, well, then I need to sort of talk up my downtown creds, which are, you know, that, you know, this is moving and shaking kind of art, where I'm trying to deal with issues that a lot of people are really very passionate about, which is, you know, climate change and that kind of thing. So, you know, I just think that you just need to pick your words to your venue, and that it really can change what you said. Now, I'm going to put one caveat in there, and that is I've applied for stuff that just wasn't, like I said, appropriate, and then tried to manipulate the artist statement to try to really play up stuff that probably, I mean, was it fair? I don't know. It just wasn't, it wasn't really what my work was, and I've regretted that. It wasn't a big deal. It didn't piss anybody off. I don't think, I mean, it did get in the show, but that was probably never in the cards. Yeah. But yeah, I think it's important to really think about what you're applying for. And if you are, you know, you know, if it's a landscape show and you have a bunch of landscapes, or in this case, if you have a bunch of outdoor sculpture, then make sure that you talk about your outdoor sculpture if it's an outdoor sculpture thing. And if it's an indoor sculpture thing, then you need to think about your indoor stuff. I applied for something at the Watergate a year ago, and one of the things that really, it had to be indoors for me, and so I had to talk about my stuff in terms of being indoors.
Mm-hmm. So just really being aware of the audience and addressing, and part of the question, I don't even have a well-formed question for this or a well-formed thought for this, but one of the contradictions in the art world is that ultimately people who produce art want to sell it. And there is an organization, there has been an organization called a gallery system that brings that work to market often. And yet, I think that artists and gallerists often don't have real, and I don't mean a particular artist or a particular gallerist, but artists and gallerists don't have conversations that are really honest in a lot of ways. And I don't mean that either are dishonest. I don't mean, but you can't, again, it's not well formed in my brain. When with salespeople, I would say, as I said to you earlier, if the spotlight's on you, it's not in the right place. And what I would mean, if I saw a resume and it said, my objective is to develop my skills, I'm a quick study, I learn very quickly, and I want to work very hard for your company. That's very different than saying, you have a company to grow and my contribution, the contribution of my skills will help you meet your goals at the end of the year. If you're writing to a gallerist, what the gallery exists for, they may love you, they may love your work, they may want to support your work, but they ultimately have to make money. So I don't know how artists can, if they're writing to a gallery, address, and this is, so it's an unformed thought. I don't know how artists actually have that conversation about their work. That's because many people are doing work and want to sell it, but maybe don't want to sell it or don't know how to sell it or don't have a market for it, but never can come out and say, I think my work will be marketable in your gallery. Now, as a salesperson, I would say that. But it's a kind of conversation that most artists would be, I think, could be considered crass if you even said, I think my work will sell in your gallery. But that's an important decision that the gallerist is making. If they're taking you on, it's because you're going to be paying some portion of their rent. To be frank.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I think that, you know,
I don't know how you address that. The artist statement has to say something like that. This is, you don't say marketable, but you want to create, you want to convey that my work is useful. It's useful in society. It's useful. It will have an audience. There is an audience for this work. I mean, I don't know how you say that. And that's why it's sort of an unformed thought. But I think it's an important one. And I think it sort of never gets addressed. Nobody ever, this is just another thing for me, that when you work in an organization, you can talk to your boss and talk about the money is right or it's not right, or I have benefits or I don't. When you're going to a gallerist, it feels sometimes like they control it all. But actually, they don't really control it all. If you look at the market controls it, and they know their share of the market. So matching your work to the right gallery is critical, and matching your work to, if you want to sell it, to that which will sell. I don't know how, and I don't know how you do that in a statement, actually. But it has to be there. It has to be part of your conscious approach.
Well, it definitely has to.
It's not just art, it's not just aesthetic. It is also a product that you want somebody to sell for you. You want to bring it to the market. So anyways, I'm humbled by not knowing how to deal with that, but we'll work on it.
Well, I think the thing is that and I'm not the best person to speak on this, but I think there are certain market problems right now, particularly in art, where from.
I'm losing your sound.
That most of the, oh, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. There are very few places to emerge from. So, gallerists, for the most part, from the few that I've talked to extensively, sort of, they have their stable of people, and they're trying to make sure that they keep their doors open for the most part.
Right.
And so another person coming up to them and trying to sell them on work is something that, doesn't always appeal to them. The work usually sells itself, and the artist's statement really can't speak for the work. What it can do is set it in context, is to say, okay, I get sort of where this person is going. These just aren't mattresses and blankets that are painted on. Right. This guy's trying to talk about the dreams and how those fit into our daily lives, and this bedding material that is all made out of petroleum products now, and that kind of thing. So.
Right on. Thanks, Eric, for mentioning that, because Steve had that question, where's the line between describing your art and selling it? You know, it's the commercial realm and the commodity. Joan, you had a thought.
I have one other thought, which is one of the things I used to say to my reps, and I repeat it, and I will say this to art as a collector who gets approached regularly. I usually come back with 20 different business cards. You can't sell anybody anything. People have to buy, and that's a fact as far as I'm concerned. So exposing your work, expressing your work, presenting your work through the artist statement is a way of enrolling me, into your world, and that's how it, for me, that's how the work that we've ever bought has happened. It's, we sort of meet somebody, we see the work, we meet somebody through a referral, and we buy. I've never been sold work. You can't convince me to, I said this to Eric the other day, you know, there's reasons why people have, and by the way, it's never a reflection on an individual artist's work. People like strawberry, vanilla, and chocolate ice cream. There's reason that there's 28 flavors at Howard Johnson's the old way, right? Or whatever they do now. Because people have different tastes. So it's no reflection on you if somebody is not interested in your work or a gallerist is not interested in your work. What you have to do is keep presenting the work, and you find the world where it fits or where it's engaged.
Right on. Okay, I'd like to wrap up with one final question, and then we wanted to talk quickly about the resources and upcoming opportunities to view a lot of great WSG art. A question came in here, and as my screen is scrolling, Steve, thank you again. How much is a gallery selling the art, and how much are they selling the artist?
Both. That's my experience is galleries are, if they're a good gallery, will work with and promote an artist and give them feedback on their work and give them feedback on how their collectors, what the reactions of the public is to their work, and maybe help inform them. So they are doing both.
Great.
For me,
Okay.
one more part of that answer, which is because it also then the consistency of the artist statement. One of the things my husband said when we started collecting is to look for a very consistent career, that you might like one piece, but you like that person's work, and you like that person's work over time. And I think a good gallery understands the bigger picture and will support that.
Right on. Thanks, Joan. Appreciate that. And thank you, everyone, for your wonderful questions. Before we conclude for the night, and we're so appreciative and gracious of your time, we wanted to point you to some resources. And like we mentioned earlier in the seminar, that we are going to share all these files, these slides, all this content. I know it's a lot to jot down, write down, and capture. So we're going to send the slides to you with all these great hyperlinks that you can click on directly. A lot of great resources, books and articles that you can read, how to craft those artist statements, who to go to. And likewise, if we go to the next slide, Annie, thank you. You can contact us at social@washingtonsculptors.org. And if you reach out to us, that's an inbox where you'll talk directly to me. And as a human, not a robot, I will send that out to Eric and Joan, and we'll help you with your artist statements. We'd love to learn more about you and your work. And if you have any ideas. So look forward to that communication, as well as a survey after this event to go alongside with our future iterations as part of this series on professional development. Okay, and let's go to that final slide, Annie. Of course, you know me, I've got to plug all the great things that we're working on here at the Washington Sculptors Group. Despite the pandemic, we've been very busy. I tell you all, it's been virtual but incredible. On Tuesday, please join us for our members forum. That's an open forum. Bring any topic you like. Hear about each other's work, share your work, updates, galleries that you've been in. We've been having such a great time doing these conversations despite the pandemic. We've scheduled it for an hour. It usually runs over 2 hours, and folks get to connect and network with each other. So we really appreciate seeing you, hearing from you, and getting those ideas. of course, we would be remiss without mentioning the next session in this professional development series, develop your elevator pitch and your speech, develop your elevator speech. And that will be on August 20th, same time, same channel, right? We'd love to see you there. Please sign up. And then, of course, we've got in-person exhibitions right now and coming up in the fall. Artina 2020, you can practice safe social distancing outdoors at the Sandy Spring Museum. And it's a lot of fun. The installation photographs, we put them up on Facebook and we're sharing them online. Please get out there, take a selfie, share it with us, tag your friends. We'd love you to support the work that's out there. Incredible pieces that we have out there outdoors, and on a beautiful day, why not go out and get some fresh air? And then Sculpture Now to conclude sort of the fall, going from September through November. Those artists will be announced soon, but they've got incredible work, and that's another opportunity that we'd love to share with you all. We're almost at our time. I think we got about 30 seconds left. I just want to thank everybody for your time, your patience, your gracious amount of time tonight. Again, I just have to say, despite the IT issues that we had, I want to give a round of applause to Joan and Eric and Annie on the back end there. Thank you all. You did a great job, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Okay, so everyone take care, have a great night, and stay well. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Good
And
night.
answer if you would the survey, because that'll help us improve the programming. So
It was
Definitely.
great.
Yeah, thank you guys for coming.
Thank
Thank you
you.
all.
It was great.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, guys, I'm going to take off.
Good night.
Thank you, Eric. It was really great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I
Thank you, Mark.
appreciate everybody's support, and I really
Thank you,
was
Steve. Great
Thank,
questions.
thank you so much, Joan. Thank you so much, Asmus. Thank you so much, Annie. That was fantastic.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
went really
thank you.
well. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Thank you,
take care.
Linda. Thank you, Bill.
All
Have a
right.
great night, everybody. Thank you, Claudia, Wendy. Always